Hey, and welcome to Star Goblin Radio. Today I'm going to make my first Phantasy Star character and walk you through how to do that. Before we jump into creating our character, we want to get a couple of important files that'll be helpful in the process. The first is the character sheets, which are available on skydongames.com. An Errata is available that makes some corrections to the book, so make sure you have that if you're using a physical copy of the book. The PDF has been updated to correct those errors, but you'll only see those if you've downloaded the most recent version of it, so if that applies to you, make sure to download the newest copy. And finally, there are a lot of rules questions that have been asked in Skydon Games' Discord channel, and anytime Skydon Games gives a direct answer to one of these rules questions, I try and document it. This isn't errata, it's just rules clarification, but rules clarification coming from the official source. I've linked all these documents in the description of this video, and with that, let's make a character. We're going to start in Chapter 2 on page 26. This section acts as a home base as we're making our character. We'll be returning here frequently for the steps to complete character creation. Phantasy Star has a lot of variant rules. These are optional rules that have to be approved by your GM or Game Master when you're creating your character, so when you create your own, make sure you talk to the person who's running your game, and work with them to determine which rules are available for creating your character. Jumping right in, step 1 is creating a character concept. This is just a couple of short words that describe the character you're setting out to create. I've already got a character in mind. They're an android and a Palmanian government agent, and they specialize in forensics investigations. I was inspired to make this character based on a couple other characters I really like and mushed together. If you're ever struggling for ideas for character creation, pick a couple characters you like, pick the things you like about them, and mix them into a new person.
It works every time.
Nothing we decide right now is set in stone, it just gives us some guidance on the direction to proceed. Having a character in mind, next I'm going to give them a name. In the classic Phantasy Star series, almost every character that you can recruit to your party has a 4-letter name. So I'll stick with that theme. It's not required or anything like that, but it does go with the setting. Alright, and now that my character Murph has a name, I'm going to choose his origin. So the origin's made up of 3 different pieces. The first is your species, and then your background, and then your story bond. And for my character, I've already decided that he's an android. Being an android will get me a couple of origin features that I'll record in this little box here on the left. For one, I don't need to eat, drink, breathe, or sleep, and my character is going to count as an automaton or a robot against certain attacks and damaging effects that target automatons and robots. If my character ever drops to 0 hit points, to stabilize him so he stops dying, my allies will have to perform a mechanics check against a DC 10 to stabilize him. And last, he gains dark vision 60 feet, so he can see up to 60 feet in pitch dark, and when he levels up to 5, that improves, so I put a little note there as well. Androids are immune to poison and disease. It's not a great place to put this, and the origin features is a little cramped here, so I prefer to put it down here in resistances. And being an android grants me an armored frame, which gives me a +1 to my defense score. That increases at level 11, so I'll also add a little note about that. And I'll place that miscellaneous bonus of +1 in the box next to it. And finally, I know that my character's speed is 30 feet due to being an android. So now we're ready to move on to step 2 of Origins, which is selecting our background. Backgrounds start on page 36 in chapter 3, and they all follow the same formula. They'll give you 2 skills that you'll get some ranks in, you'll get a couple of proficiencies, and some starting equipment. Being a forensic scientist and investigator, I'm going to choose the investigator background. This background's going to give them skills in insight and investigation, meaning both of these start with 2 ranks, so we'll click these little boxes here. Each rank in your skills will give you a +1 bonus when you go to roll those, and insight's used for reading people's motivations or telling if they're lying, and investigation's used for investigating your surroundings. This background also gives me 2 proficiencies, one with a disguise kit, and one with a gaming set of my choice. I have to pick one of these gaming sets, and they're all listed in the equipment section, So it's up to you if you want to flip around the book to select your gaming set proficiency now, or wait until you're buying equipment and in the equipment chapter and pick it then. In my case, I've already done the research, and I know that he'll be proficient with playing cards. And for starting equipment, he gains basic clothes, which I write down in the equipment section. He gets either a digital journal or a recording unit, and I've gone with the recording unit, and he starts with 150 Meseta. Most of our equipment has a weight value, but we'll wait until we're looking at the equipment chapter to bother writing that down. The last part of our origin is our story bond, and we can pick one of these on page 39. There's 20 to choose from. We can work with our DM to create our own. In my case, I rolled randomly and landed an 8 for friendship. This says you're alone and are seeking lifelong friends and a place to belong. I like these story bonds. It doesn't have a mechanical effect, but just tells you how to roleplay your character and what motivates them. And sometimes it can trigger some ideas that you might not have otherwise come up with for your character's personality. In the case of Murph here, I assume that he was a really hardworking student and became a little obsessed with his job at the expense of being able to socialize and make friends. And he seeks acceptance in the work that he does. Having picked my species of android, my background of investigator, and the friendship story bond, the last origin step is to record our languages. All characters gain Galactic Common, usually just called Common, and some species and backgrounds gain additional ones. In Murph's case, he just gets Common. Step 3 of character creation moves us on to picking our profession. There's 7 different professions to choose from, and Murph, as a forensics investigator, could fit in a couple of these. The operative makes a lot of sense, as at level 3 they can become an investigator, and the hunter makes some sense, as they can track and search for others, and that fits in with the investigator side of things as well. But I think I'm going to go with the savant in this case, and really lean into the biology and forensicist side of the character. We'll record our profession and our level, and our character starts with 0 XP. And now we're going to record our features. Since I'm creating a first level character, I'm going to record all the features that start with level 1. The first one is Savant Specialty. Got 2 of these to pick from. Protector gives me some extra weapon proficiencies and an extra weapon mastery. Tech Specialist grants me an additional Prime Technique, which is like the lowest level spell, and also gives me a bonus whenever I use computers or medicine. I think I prefer Tech Specialist, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down in my profession features. The next level 1 feature is Techniques. This is essentially using magic. My tech ability is Wisdom, so I'm going to record that, and it means that when I cast a technique, I'll use my Wisdom ability modifier on that roll, or in some cases, the person I target with my technique might be the one rolling. In that case, they'll make a saving throw against a number that my Wisdom ability modifier will help determine. At level 1, I gain a +2 tech bonus. I'm going to write this in the tech attack spot here. This will just help me remember when I go to total this up a little later on down the road that I get a +2 from my profession. For technique points, I gain 8 of these, and I use these whenever I cast techniques, and I can rest to regenerate them. On the back of my character sheet, I'm going to write down that I get 4 prime techniques, so I'll put a P in the rank box just to remind myself that I'll need to pick out 4 of these. Prime techniques are essentially the weakest type of technique, but they don't use technique points, so you can essentially use them infinitely without ever running out of resources. And that total of 4 comes from 3 from being a savant, and an extra 1 from having chosen that tech specialist savant specialty. And I know 3 techniques of rank 1. Both skills and magic have ranks, and they're very different things. Skill ranks give you a +1 bonus whenever you roll your die using that skill. The rank of a technique essentially says how powerful it is, and at level 1 I can only cast rank 1 techniques, and I only know 3 of them. And my final level 1 feature is Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery will give me a special ability with one weapon of my choice. Now before I choose my weapon mastery, I need to look at what weapons the Savant gains proficiency with. At the start of every profession, we get 2 lists. One tells us our core traits, so we'll go ahead and record those now. And the second is a grid that shows all the features we gain. We'll double check that to make sure we record everything we get at first level. Our core traits say that our primary ability as a Savant is Wisdom, so when we select our abilities, we'll probably want to have a pretty high Wisdom score. Our hit die is 8 per level, so we'll go ahead and write that down here. We have a max of 1. We gain a saving throw bonus to our Wisdom and Charisma. Page 29, there's a chart, and that's where we can see that the bonus is equal to a +2. So I'll go ahead and write down that +2 on both my Wisdom and Charisma under the save spot here. Again, a placeholder. Eventually I'll add more to these numbers, and this is just to remind me that my Savant profession grants me +2 in both of these. I gain 2 ranks in 2 skills from Astrophysics, Computer, Insight, Lore, Mechanics, Medicine, Persuasion, and Xenobiology. So for this character, I'm going to choose Medicine to gain 2 ranks in, and Xenobiology. I feel like those make sense for somebody with a forensics background. I gain weapon proficiencies, and here's where I'm also going to choose my weapon mastery. So the weapon proficiencies for this profession are bows, claws, daggers, pistols, and rods. And I'm going to choose pistol for my character's weapon mastery, which means that when I use a pistol, I will have an additional ability I can trigger using the mastery effect. For my armor proficiencies, I get light, medium armor, and shields, so I'll check these boxes for light, medium, and shields. Characters can use weapons and armor that they're not proficient with, but it usually is not a great idea. They don't gain full benefit from it, and it really holds them back. The Savant gains tool proficiencies with 1 artisan's tool of their choice, and then either 1 gaming set, 1 musical instrument, or 1 vehicle. I'll need to check the equipment chapter to determine what these different tools are. Again, I've already done a little research here. You can either flip forward and select these now, or wait until you're picking out the rest of your equipment to document what other proficiencies you want. For my 1 artisan tool proficiency, I've chosen alchemist supplies, which will allow me to do some chemistry if I can get my hands on one. And I've also chosen ground vehicles for my 2nd proficiency. The last entry under my Savant core traits is my starting equipment, and I can choose to start with either a leather armor, a carbon shield, 1 weapon of my choice, a set of basic clothing, and either an explorer's pack or a scientist's pack, and 100 Meseta. Or I can just gain 1000 Meseta and buy all the gear I want with that 1000. If you're brand new to the game, choosing option A is going to be a lot easier and quicker, and option B is going to give you more customization. In this case, I'm going to select option A and record leather armor and the carbon shield under my defense. I'll choose a pistol as my weapon that goes with my weapon mastery. I'll document my 2nd set of basic clothing. I'll make note of my scientist pack that I've selected. And again, the equipment chapter will tell us exactly what's in that pack. For right now, we just want to note that we have it. And I get an additional 100 Meseta, bumping up my starting cash to 250. And the last step is I'm going to double check this Savant features grid to make sure I've recorded everything, and it looks like I have it with the exception of the attack bonus. So I'm going to put that +2 attack bonus under my attack power next to my pistol, and that's a placeholder. I'll add additional numbers to that later. Now I'm going to pick out my techniques. I'm going to start with my 4 prime techniques, selecting those, documenting their casting time, their range, if they're concentration based or not, and then if they have any components required. And since a lot of these technique names are not super intuitive, I like to throw a short note about what the technique does to help me more quickly determine what I want to cast. With a couple of prime techniques around boosting allies and doing lightning damage to all enemies around him, Murph is now ready to select his rank 1 techniques. And keep in mind that when your character takes an 8-hour rest, They can forget one of these techniques and learn a new one, so nothing you're selecting right now is permanent. I've chosen my 3 rank 1 techniques: Resta, which is a powerful healing spell, Sar, which is a weaker healing spell that has a range, and Su, which is a powerful spirit damage spell that also debuffs the enemy. If you're like me, this was the longest part of character creation. There's a lot of different techniques to review. It's not super obvious what they do without reading them, so it might take you a little bit to get through this portion. But we're now at the next step, which is choosing our character's abilities. There's 3 ways to do this, and which method you use is entirely up to your GM, so you'll need to work with them. One of them is the standard array, which is a predetermined set of numbers, and you get to choose which abilities to put them in. The next is point buy, which tends to be the most customizable, and the last one is rolling randomly to determine your abilities. For this video, I'm going to do standard array, and when I do this, I get to choose 2 abilities to put a +2 modifier in, 2 abilities to put a +1 modifier in, 1 ability to put a 0 in, and 1 ability to put a -1 in. And then after I assign those, I get to pick any 2 of my abilities and increase them by 1. I put a 0 in Murph's strength, which is the average score. He's not particularly strong or weak. He's more agile than most of his other physical attributes, so I give him a +2 to his dexterity. He's got a +1 in his constitution, which is his hit points and ability to physically resist. He's got a +1 in his intelligence, which is like his book smarts. He's got a +2 in his wisdom, which is the most important score for a savant, and it represents your perception, your intuition, and your willpower. And finally, he's got a -1 in charisma. Charisma is used for social interactions, and with Murph's background in academia and being obsessed with his job, and his story bond of seeking friends that he doesn't have yet, he's a little awkward, and that's represented by his below-average charisma score. I can now increase 2 of these by +1, and so I'm going to place those into wisdom. That'll be important for his investigation capabilities, as well as for casting techniques. And I chose to put the other +1 into intelligence, which will boost some of his knowledge skills. There's no wrong way to stat out your character's abilities, though some stat blocks are more challenging with some professions than others. If you follow the advice that your professions section provides for the most important ability for that profession, you should be alright. And that brings us to step 5, filling in the stats. So now that our character's modifiers are in place on their abilities, we can start to apply them across the character sheet. We're going to start with saves. Each ability has a save, and you roll a save to avoid negative effects to your character. The save bonus is equal to the modifier of that ability, plus any additional bonuses. So my 0 strength gives me a 0 strength save, my +2 dex gives me a +2 dex save, and so on. In my case, the Savant gives me my save bonus of +2 to my wisdom save and my charisma save, so I will add those 2 scores together, gives me a +5 on wisdom saves, and my +2 save bonus with my -1 charisma modifier gives me a +1 save bonus. Next, we'll fill out our skills. Each skill has an ability associated with it after the name of the skill, and we'll add or subtract that ability's modifier from the skill total. In addition to the modifier, we add +1 for each rank that we have in that skill. And once we finish, it looks a little something like this. The ones that had 2 ranks in them gained a +2 bonus that gets added to that modifier. And then of note, computers and medicine both gained an additional +3, and that's from my Savant Tech Specialist feature, which allows me to increase both of those skills equal to my wisdom modifier. So in the case of medicine, my 2 ranks, my wisdom modifier, and then my wisdom modifier added a second time through Tech Specialist gives me my highest skill of a +8. Starting hit points are determined by your hit die type, which in my case was a D8, added to my Constitution modifier of +1 for a total of 9. Tech attack is equal to ability plus tech bonus. In the case of the Savant, that's wisdom plus tech bonus. Tech save DC, which is something that occasionally enemies have to roll their saving throws against, is 8 plus ability plus save bonus, so something to keep in mind, tech save DC uses the save bonus and not the tech bonus. We'll record our agility. This is rolled at the start of combat to determine the order characters take their turns. It's equal to my dex mod. Some professions or equipment can boost that further, but I don't have anything like that. We'll total our passive perception, which is 10, plus our perception modifier. In my case, that's +3 for a total of 13. Passive perception is generally what enemies roll their stealth against to see if your character notices them. And the last thing to do is add our fate points. These are on page 11. There's a chart that tells us at level 1, we use a d6 for our fate points, and we have a max of 3. Some species gain additional fate points. We now move on to equipment. Make sure to talk to your GM to make sure that the equipment that you purchase in this chapter is available in this setting. The first thing I'm going to do is look at the pistol and write down as much as I can under the attack section here. And because my weapon has weapon mastery, when I use a pistol, I can use the burst function on it. I've chosen to document the burst attack separately. It's a lot of information and it's just easier to read with a second entry. All starting equipment is grade 0, so I make sure to note that. The number of attacks at first level is just 1. To see if you hit an enemy, you roll your attack power. Attack power with a melee weapon is generally going to be your strength modifier plus your attack bonus, and when making a ranged attack, it'll be your dexterity modifier plus attack bonus. Murph has a dexterity modifier of +2, he's got an attack bonus of +2, but the pistol states that when you're holding a pistol in one hand and have no weapon in your other hand, you gain an additional +2 attack power to that roll, so his attack power is +6. I had also made note of Murph's burst attack with his pistol, which he gets from his weapon mastery, and that says that you can attack 3 adjacent enemies, and instead of making an attack roll, they have to make a dexterity save versus 8 plus your attack power, and anybody who fails takes 1d6 damage. So in this case, that dexterity save is against a 14. When determining damage with your weapon, you also add that modifier to the damage roll. So in the case of my pistol, it's 1d6 plus 2 for my dexterity modifier. And now I'm going to document my defenses. I can see that leather armor is light and grants me an 11 base to my defense, and the carbon shield gives me a +1. I'll populate the dex modifier box under defense with my +2 dex mod, and total everything together for a total of 15 defense. That's the number enemies have to roll to hit my character with their attack. Next, I'm going to document the equipment that comes in my Scientist's pack, and I'm going to fill out all of the weight of my equipment. Some GMs don't care about equipment weight or encumbrance rules, it's really up to your table. In my case, I'm going to document all this information. I also checked with my imaginary GM who approved the equipment I purchased, so in addition to my starting equipment, my character picked up 2 ammunition clips for his gun, picked up a dagger for close combat, a set of playing cards, and I also documented my leather armor and carbon shield here so I could track their grade and weight as well. I make sure to subtract any meseta that I spent on equipment from my total money. I write down the stats on my dagger in case I ever get into melee combat, and while most melee weapons will use your strength modifier on their attack and damage rolls, the dagger has a special property called finesse, which allows you to use your dexterity on those rolls instead. So that's beneficial to Murph, who has a high dex and a low strength, so my total attack power with the dagger is a +4. And I've chosen to select a lifestyle of modest for this character. This is mostly a role-playing mechanic, and states how much money I have to spend each day to support myself. So now I'm done with equipment. You might not be. If your profession or your background gives you a selection of proficiencies to choose from, and you were waiting until you could look at this chapter to select those, make sure you fill those out before you move on. And now that we've finished filling out our character's stats, we're at the last little bit here, which is just polishing the character's origin and their persona. Consider your character's history, where they grew up, if they're part of an organization or faction, do they have family or loved ones, What are their goals, desires, and fears? And then consider their persona, how they carry themselves, what they physically look like. And once you've done that, you've got a completed character, one with strengths and flaws, and history and dreams. Let me know what you're planning on playing in your upcoming games, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer in the comments. And that's it. That's the show, so until next time, I hope you have a good adventure.